Welcome to the Former Fat Friend podcast. I'm Kasey.
I'm Lisa.
I'm Allie, and together we've lost over 370 pounds.
We all know what it's like to be the fat friend, and now we are sharing the ins and outs of our weight loss journeys.
Welcome back.
Hey.
Hi.
Welcome back.
Okay.
Ooh.
Some of these episodes that we do are planned out and we kind of know what we're going to talk about. And I think this week, something I've really been struggling with a lot is some unhealthy comparisons. They've been really, really loud for me lately, and I don't think I'm alone in that. And so I think this week we're going to dive into kind of what's going on there and what we all experience and how we get through it. And
yeah, this is what we wanted to do with this podcast, right? We talked about like bringing our conversations to other people and making sure that they don't feel alone.
Mm-hmm.
And I think all three of us were like, this is scrap the podcast episode that we wanted to record. This is more relevant and more important.
For sure. So Lisa, I know this has kind of been top of mind for you, and it's also something that Allie and I have also struggled with, but I want to start with you because this has been more relevant recently. Can you talk a little bit about the ways you've been comparing yourself lately and what that struggle has felt like?
yeah, I mean, I think probably what kicked it off, I went on a vacation last week to Colorado and I tried to ski. And I've only tried to ski once before in my life. And it was 8 years ago when I was 250 pounds. And I laughed and whatever, but it was not great. Like I was not really capable. And I did it for a couple hours and I bowed out. And this was like, no, I'm in Steamboat Springs, Colorado. Like this is where people go to ski. I'm going to do this right. I booked a full day lesson and I had a really great morning where I felt like capable and in control of my body and in tune with my body, where I like, oh, the things I feel stable, I feel secure, like. And then we got back from lunch and we went to a bigger mountain and all of that went out the window. And I felt so incapable. And I started to get further and further behind from the other people in my group. And that started to feed the self-doubt and the fear that was already happening. And it was one of those things where like my entire life, I have been the fat friend. I have felt like the person that couldn't keep up, that was holding everybody else back, that was going to be picked last on the team. And I was so excited because I was like, well, I lost all this weight. So like now I'm going to be able to ski and I'm going to crush it.
Right.
Yeah.
And I so badly wanted that to be the day of like, I'm going to be able to keep up. And nobody else had skied before in my group. So it was like we were all starting at the same base level. So I was like, I got this. And then as the afternoon went on, when I tell you that I stood at the top of that hill and felt every bit like that 250-pound girl that I used to be, like there was every coping mechanism, every like self-soothe, safety signal, anything I've learned to do since surgery completely went out the window. And I was that person again. And it starts that comparison game of like, why can they do this and I can't? I must be doing something wrong.
Yeah, it makes me think about how I think a lot of us tie any shortcomings or any problems in our life to our weight. Like, this isn't working out for me because I'm overweight. I know for me, it was always dating. Like, if I were skinnier, I would be able to find somebody to date. It wouldn't be so hard. There were so many things that I thought were weight related. And when you lose the weight, you often realize like, oh no, it was just me the whole time. Like,
Oh yeah, wait, I just suck.
yeah. And I think that's kind of maybe what happened for you is like in your mind, your inability to keep up or, engage in things that required athleticism was so intrinsically tied in your mind to your weight, when in reality, skiing for an adult human who has never skied before is hard for anybody. I mean, that's not a natural skill, and it doesn't really have anything to do with weight. And I think that's a hard thing to realize, like, because you lose all the weight and you think, oh, suddenly life is going to get better, and it does in a lot of ways.
Sure.
But you also have to realize, like, all of these things that I attributed to my weight aren't really real.
They're not about my weight. And my friend that I was with, that I was visiting, she said she saw me be so frustrated and upset. And she was like, dude, you tried something new at 35 years old. Like a lot of people wouldn't do that. I still think you should be proud of yourself.
Yeah.
And I did go back a second day and like, I wanted to turn it around. I didn't want to end the trip on like such a down note. But yeah, I think I've never been athletically inclined and I always attributed it to my weight. But the three of us we played pickleball and I was so excited because I was like, I can do these things now. And these things are like, they don't feel like exercise. They actually feel like recreational activity and like, this is fun. And I felt on par with the two of you, like prior to pickleball, just like, oh, we're all like active, healthy women, and I'm going to be able to do this with them. And spoiler alert, I'm not good at pickleball.
And guess what? That's okay.
It is okay.
And I don't know if you knew this, but I played tennis in high school.
Yeah, I didn't know it.
Yeah,
so it makes sense.
That's a little different.
And it's hard when like, because I know a lot of times myself and other people, I'm sure we compare ourselves to those that we see on Instagram.
Yeah, totally.
Right. And like their journey and their whatever. And Instagram is, I mean, it's mostly a highlight reel. But I think it's something different to compare. I found myself comparing to the two of you because it was like, well, wait, Kasey's pretty new at pickleball too. Allie's 4 months like less far out from surgery than me. But the fact of the matter is Allie's an athlete, always has been. Kasey played tennis. Like, I don't have good hand-eye coordination. I'm not, but I literally was in that court, like picking myself apart, comparing why can they do this and I can't?
Yeah.
What do they have that I don't have? Why am I falling short? And Allie, I remember you literally, I don't think anyone knew how upset I was. I'm also very competitive, which doesn't help. But I remember you joking and being like, our worth is not tied to pickleball.
I mean, I was kind of joking, but also serious.
Yeah. But then you said, you were like, all we need to do is not cry. And in that moment, that is literally all I was trying to do was not cry. And I don't know that was like, but it's so silly. But it's like that comparison and that I am less than, I am not capable is so deep seated.
This is something I've had to confront with running. So I post a lot on Instagram how I run, and it was honestly just something I started because I didn't know what else to do activity-wise after I had surgery. I really didn't do anything except walk for the first 6 months. And then I was like, all right, well, now what? And so I decided to download a Couch to 5K app. And that was my goal, was to run a 5K. And I did it. I did that app, but I struggled. That app was supposed to be, what is it, like 8 weeks, I think, start to finish.
I have no idea.
I had to repeat days over and over and over again because running does not come naturally to me. And that's something that I have had to learn over the last year and a half of trying to pretend like I'm a runner. It just doesn't. And I can do it. And I'm really proud of myself for achieving what I have. But I think lately, as I did the 5K, then I did the 5-miler, then I did the 10K with my sister. My sister is a natural athlete. She crushed that 10K. Like, she was so far ahead of me. It was ridiculous. And I don't even think she trained for it. Or if she did, it wasn't very much. And then
Love that for her.
Yeah, I started dating my boyfriend who ran in college. And then I met Allie, who was a former Division I athlete and a ridiculously fast runner. And it's hard because it's, on the one hand, I'm like, well, why am I not able to like just do this? Like, everyone else is able to like do this so much better than I am. And then also having to recognize, like, I'm not a runner. Running is never going to come naturally to me. And it's okay if I run a 12.5-minute mile and I never get any faster. That is 12.5 minutes faster than I was 2.5 years ago, you know?
When you weren't running at all.
Yeah,
exactly. It's funny because I think sometimes obviously the way that we see ourselves is so different from the way that other people see us, right? Like weight loss or not. And I remember the three of us, my first race ever, the three of us ran a 5-mile race. And I was convinced I was going to run by myself. And it was because of the noise. Even skiing this weekend, my friend and I skied together. And I was like, you need to be ahead of me. Stop trying to ski with me. You're stressing me out. You gotta go away. And I felt that, I thought that's how I was going to feel on the 5-miler, because I was worried about, well, Allie left us in the dust.
Yeah.
She was like, I'm Allie. Which was great because then she was there to capture us when we crossed the
we got all
Which, by the way, too, that was a surprise to me too.
Sure. No, I know. We give you a lot of crap. And
I mean, I'm not like, that's also a genuine, I think, thing that often feels like it's garbage. Like, I just want to finish. Like, I do. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, I know that it's genuine. It's very much genuine. And then sometimes we surprise ourselves, which is really cool. But my fear was slowing Kasey down. I kept waiting for you to go ahead. Like I wanted you to go. Like don't let me hold you back. Like
you told
just
me
go.
a lot of times, like you can go. And I was like, I don't think you get it. Like this is my pace.
I'm
like
going.
I am going.
Right. And in my mind, I was like, no, Kasey's gonna, and in your head, you're thinking about probably like, I'm a slow runner. Am I like you're having some of the same worry thoughts I'm having?
I was just like, dear God, let me finish. That's all I was thinking.
It's so funny. It's like, you remember when I said you're an athlete now and you're like, it makes me so uncomfortable for you to say. So I have the same sort of reaction because like I'm not a runner until recently. Like I never had been. And I remember in high school, we did a 5K, like my swim team did a 5K. Like I remember how miserable I felt doing that 5K, and that like my friend's 50-year-old mom, who like is a runner, but like she beat me, and I was probably the last person in my group to do it. And even the people that I could swim faster than could always run faster than me. And then later on in high school, we would do like trail runs with the team that I was on growing up. And my coach would have to like stop and wait for me like really frequently. And again, like I get it. It's different level of athletics and stuff. I don't deny there's like a baseline fitness there, but it's so interesting and like almost uncomfortable for me. I don't want you to stop doing it, but it's uncomfortable for me when you're like, oh, there's Allie like being a runner. And I'm like, no, like this is like brand new. And I also think that's why I compared myself so much more when I was younger and pre-surgery to others. And that's why like I definitely do it now. But I don't think nearly as badly as I did. And it definitely does not have a negative impact on me anymore because I force myself to choose not to do that.
So did you guys find when you were actively losing weight, did you compare the rate of weight loss to other people that you saw or knew?
First thing I looked at.
Yeah. I remember vividly going on Instagram and searching for other people that had a similar surgery date to mine. Because I found like prior to surgery, there were a lot of people I followed that are well known in the community that were much further post-op than I was. I was a brand new baby. And I was like, I want community and support from someone that's going through what I'm going through in this moment. Not that went through it a year ago or 3 years ago. And then I found some of those people, and then I constantly compared myself to them. If they posted weight loss or if they, I found myself comparing a lot of like, actually, Allie, I remember you and I got coffee. I think you had your first day where you had less restriction and you were hungrier. And I think you had eaten like 700 or 800 calories and you were terrified.
Yeah.
And I was 4 months further out than you. And I remembered when that happened to me. And I sent you a screenshot of that day to be like, hey, this happened to me. And in the moment I panicked. I didn't know, but it was like I was just hungrier.
Yeah, I did feel so much better after that. I remember that.
And hey, I was like 4 months later, like I'm still losing. I'm still like, it didn't, nothing happened.
The world didn't stop. Yeah.
Right. You're going to be okay. So those types of comparisons are so helpful.
I find that,
So it's it's a very fine line because they can be helpful and they can be so detrimental. And I know you, Allie, you've said before that like you've heard other people say, oh, I got to turn off social media. It's getting too, messy with the comparisons. And you're like, wait, no, that motivates me. That helps me.
I love that. Yeah. So I didn't find anyone that had a similar surgery date to me. And mostly because I wasn't interested in that, right? Like I wanted to see what was possible for me because how many times do we say this? I've never been successful with losing weight. And so my first thing I would look at was their stats. Like you said, you can find someone who was like 600 pounds and is now 250, and that's fantastic. But that wasn't the road I wanted or that I thought was even possible for me, right? Like I had, like you, I had never imagined getting under 200 pounds, right? My like pipe dream goal was 5 pounds heavier than where I am today. I had no clue. And my surgeon and I, like, we never talked about goal weight or anything like that. And she told me, like, you can expect to lose 70% of your excess, which for me would have been like right at 200 pounds, basically.
Yeah, I did the same thing. I would find people who had similar like starting weights to me who were what I would consider successful. And I would scroll back through their Instagram feeds to try to find like how much had they lost at 3 months? How much had they lost at 6 months? And then see if I was like on track with that. And I even found this app where you could put in your starting weight, your surgery date, and what you were now. And it would give you a graph to tell you if you were on track, above average, or below average.
Oh, wow.
And I was
okay. I'm sorry. Just put that in the show notes.
No,
but actually don't, because it was so unhealthy and so obsessive.
Yeah.
But I think part of it is like kind of what you were getting at, Allie. Like this is really unknown for all of us, and you want to know what's possible. And
exactly.
You also, I think, for people who have failed at a lot of things, you want to know if you're failing, and you want some indicator that you're doing okay, or
a bar, a measure, something to like,
So it's funny because like I think of that graph for me. Maybe I'm not always this way, but you guys have seen this with the podcast stuff. Like I'm a lot harder on myself.
I think we all are.
Yeah. And a graph like that would have, I think, reassured me that I was okay. Like if I were on that curve anywhere, that someone else somewhere had done that, like I think that would have helped me,
even if it showed that you were below average.
I think so. Just like that I was on, I mean, as long as I wasn't like problematic below average, right? Like, you know, like I'm on, I'm, I don't know, in the middle 50%. Like, I don't know, maybe it would have, I think it would have like inspired me a little bit, or reassured me that like, you know, there are other people that are on this curve. Like this line represents people who are performing the same way I am.
Allie, you're really great about that. Like you did that with this race. I think Kasey and I are both really concerned about this race and finishing on time. There's a very, very strict timeline because it's in DC, and there are strict rules about how long the street can be closed. And so there is an actual sweeper bus that comes and takes you off the course if you don't finish in time. And I'm like, this thing's gonna have to plow me down. Like I am not getting on that
kicking
damn
and
bus.
Screaming.
Yeah. So we're running for my life from the sweep bus.
You guys aren't gonna be on it.
So that's what like I think Kasey and I have both expressed being terrified. And Allie went to the data. Allie was like, I went back and I looked at last year's finishing times, and here are all of the people that did this. Yeah, literally, here are the receipts. Like you're going to be okay. That's exactly what I thought of when you were like, as long as I was on that curve. And I think there were people that finished after the timeline by a few minutes and like got to finish.
Also, it was close. It was right now when I learned that that's why they have a sweep bus.
Oh, really?
Wait, I didn't know that's why they did it. I just thought it was totally like you're out.
No, it's because they got to open the roads.
Idea. Actually, so I'm doing the half marathon the next week, and my friend that I'm doing it with said something about, I don't want to run for 4 hours without headphones. And I'm like, you're not going to do it for 4 hours. You could walk that faster than that. And she's like, I don't know. You guys are going to be there and I'm going to be bringing up the rear. And I was like, well, what about the sweep bus? Like I didn't say that, but in my head, I was like, certainly the sweep bus will pick her up.
I don't think all races have a sweep bus.
Especially not if it's in Delaware, probably.
Oh, that's so funny.
No.
I had no idea. But yeah, so it's funny because I looked at like height was one thing, because I think like I've learned just like my body being a taller woman and a bigger woman is just so different than like when a person who's like 5'2", it's fantastic for them. When they lose weight, like it's a completely different story. And it was very difficult for me to also find someone who I felt like worked out the way I did. And I knew that I couldn't let go of that like post-op. And so finding, and I guess in a positive way, comparing those stories or whatever to like what was possible for me. It's like you said, Kasey, like I was actually not interested in like finding someone who had surgery when I did. I would find someone else who presumably looked like me before, or at least had similar stats, and then scroll all the way back to the beginning of time when they had posted like, I just got out of the hospital, and I'd be like, great, now where are we, right? And the other thing I remember comparing to was I watched a YouTube video because I like could not consume enough information once I decided I was having surgery. So I would like put on YouTube, close my phone, throw it in my console in the car, and listen to like random surgeons talk about bariatric surgery. And I learned a lot of cool stuff. But one of the things I learned was that this guy was like, I can't remember exactly what the stat was, but it was like, you can expect to have lost 50% of your weight by about 3 months in.
Whoa.
And maybe it was bypass specific. I don't remember. But he was like, that's a pretty good indicator of where you're going to be maybe it wasn't half. Maybe it was like 6 months.
I think you're right. Because I've heard that too. Yeah. And I remember hearing that and looking back because I heard it much later. And it actually was spot on accurate.
So yeah. And I remember I told my sister this, and so my sister had surgery 3 weeks after I did, which is probably another reason why like comparing just is out the window. Cause I mean, you can't have that.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so yeah, like I remember thinking like, oh, I've lost, I don't know what it was, 70 pounds. Like there's no way I'm going to continue at this rate, but like maybe I could. And if that's possible for me, then like I could find then I would find people who looked like that on Instagram. And it was really helpful for me to see like what they looked like objectively, because like I don't know what a 150, 160 pound person looks like. That's my height.
Right. I did. No, you're right. I looked at height a lot too. I forgot about that. I did definitely look for a similar surgery date, but then I also looked at like, and that was something, Kasey, I felt about you. I was like, oh wait, she kind of looks like her body kind of looks like mine. And like, look at her now. Holy crap. Maybe that really is possible.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I think it's human nature to want to do that, right? Like that is so normal. And I get questions all the time, like, how much did you lose when you were 3 months post-op? How much at 6 months? And I know exactly what is going through that person's mind when they send that message, because I did the exact same thing of digging through people's history and trying to figure it out. But I think it's a slippery slope, because one of the things I really do believe, and I think this is supported by data, is that we don't have that much control over our outcomes post-bariatric surgery. There are so many factors at play, like age, health conditions, metabolic factors, genetics. Like there are so many things that go into it that all you can do is follow your guidelines, give it your all for as long as you possibly can, and like, what's going to happen is going to happen. And you can't worry about, oh, am I on track with this person that I follow on Instagram because I want to look like what they look like? Because even if you did exactly the same thing, like Lisa, you followed me before, even if you had done every single thing to a T that I had done every day of my life post-surgery, you and I are not going to have the same outcome. Yeah. It just doesn't work that way.
It's true.
And I think that's a hard thing to sort of find that balance of like, this is normal, wanting to know this and feeling this way, but also trying to recognize that like a lot of this is just outside our control.
And I think it's so true. And I think so much of it is the mindset and the way that you choose to look at a situation, because I hear about a graph where I can see where I stand, and my immediate thought is, oh, how far behind am I going to be from everybody else? Whereas Allie is more like, oh, I'm on the curve.
As long as I'm on it, I'm happy. Yeah.
I think I'm more of the like, I'm only going to plug my data in if I think I'm ahead.
Well, yeah. I mean, naturally, I wouldn't have gone to it if I didn't think I was ahead.
But it's totally about like, I'll say something like in therapy, and my therapist would be like, that's one way to think about it. But yeah, it's about shifting your mindset and shifting your thoughts, or like identifying those thoughts and, catching them and changing them, and like kind of changing the narrative or the feelings that are surrounded by it.
Do you think when it comes to social media, what is that line between inspiration and comparison?
Or even just like healthy versus toxic, because it's all inspiring. I think it's when it becomes like self-deprecating, or when you're comparing in a negative space that makes you feel less successful. Because like you said, no two people's journeys are going to be the same. Mm-hmm. So I think it's the function of the comparison. Are you doing it because you're looking for inspiration and because it's exciting to see other people and feel a sense of community and feel that like you're not alone and that sort of thing? Or are you doing it to pick yourself apart? And I learned something recently in therapy, because I have been struggling a lot with comparisons, and I always take them as like, I'm not good enough. That's always where my comparisons end up for me. They're not inspirational. I'm so competitive and I'm so hard on myself. Somebody asked me recently, like, is your dietitian really mean to you? Like, don't eat that. You can't do that. And I was like, No, I think I'm so mean to me that everyone on my team is just like, it's okay. Give yourself some grace. Like,
also, like, you do what you're supposed to do.
I do. And I think I struggle with that because I don't understand why you wouldn't. I've had this conversation with my surgeon, with my therapist, where I'm like, because my surgeon was, I felt like she put me a little bit on this pedestal, and that made me so uncomfortable. I was like, no, stop. I'm not doing anything extraordinary. I'm literally just doing what I was told to do. I'm taking the tools that were given to me and I'm utilizing them. And my therapist was like, but what you don't understand is that there are people that aren't doing that. Mm-hmm. And I remember saying to her, like, are you telling me that there are people that pay hundreds of dollars to come see you and don't actively put in the work? And she was like, yes, that's exactly what I'm saying to you. And I'm like, I don't understand why you would have this surgery and not give it everything you have. So in my mind, I'm not doing anything extraordinary. I'm literally just doing what experts are telling me to do.
Yeah, but like you said, Kasey, like there's a ton of this that you have no control over.
Yeah.
But there's some that you do. Absolutely. And you are controlling the things that you can well. One of the things I also think, like when you said, when does it cross the line? Mm-hmm. I think like if it's driving you to get out of bed in the morning, or it's like your motivation to try to catch up to somebody else, like there's always going to be somebody there. Like you're never getting to the finish line if it's just like your motivation is to catch up or to beat them, because there's always somebody faster than you or stronger than you or skinnier than you or whatever, or has more money than you. Like there's always somebody.
Yeah.
So yeah, like if that's what you're chasing and not like health or positivity or whatever it is, like I feel like that's where it crosses the line for me.
Or like you said, it drives you to get out of bed versus you don't get out of bed because you're like, what's the point?
Right.
I think when it comes to social media, I struggle with a couple things. And I say this as a person who like has a larger following on social media, which is that I think a lot of the people in the bariatric community that end up kind of like growing and being those larger accounts that a lot of people know about are the ones who are successful from an outside perspective, like have lost the most weight, have gotten down to like a very small size, or have lost a ton of weight. And I don't know how to fix this, but I wish that there was more attention placed on the people who are maybe on the bottom end of that curve, but are working really hard and doing all of the things, because that's also real life and that's also inspiring. Those are stories that deserve attention just as much as everything else. And I think it's in part because it's a visual platform. So when you see a really dramatic before and after, that grabs your attention and you're like, wow, that's incredible. And that's cool and that's amazing. But there are a lot of before and afters that might not grab your attention quite in that same way. But the people and what they're doing and what they've come from and what they've gone through are beyond inspiring.
The things you can't see.
Yeah. And I think I learned this a lot at the bariatric retreat because I got to talk to a lot of people. And I mean, everyone looks phenomenal, but when you take away the looks part of it, the way that people have changed their lives, that's incredible. And like, those are the comparisons I think we should focus more on in the world of social media and on Instagram, and less on the like super dramatic before and after types of pictures.
When I first started sharing on Instagram a little bit more seriously, I really struggled with like knowing that people compare and that it hurts them, because like I don't in that realm, I don't really. And there are always people where I'm like, oh, wouldn't it be nice to like have a butt or like, look, whatever. But like those are things that I recognize are not really great for me, and I am lucky enough to like be able to just like choose not to think about them anymore. That's not a thing that like everyone can do, and I'm aware of that. I struggled with it because like you said, I did a lot of things by the book. I really tried. I gave it a lot of effort, but that doesn't mean I did it better than anybody else.
Right.
I just had a like visually shocking transformation very quickly.
Yeah.
And I struggled with posting things that didn't feel like preachy or that would necessarily like create a space for someone who was struggling to compare themselves to, because like I don't know what I'm doing. I'm just doing what they told me to do, like, and I'm not an authority on it. So like I struggled with that a lot because I don't have as much of an issue with it, but I know that people do. Mm-hmm. And how do I like share my story without encouraging comparison?
Yeah, I think about this all the time. And I I know some people are really sensitive talking about weight and they don't ever post their weight on their Instagram page because they don't want to trigger other people. That's not something that I've done. And I feel like I've taken the approach of like, I'm going to make my page what I want it to be and for like my community. And if it's upsetting to someone else, like please unfollow. Please
don't
protect
yourself.
That's the thing. It's not, Allie, it's not your responsibility to manage how other people's comparisons, like that's on them to know their limits and set their limits. And
I agree, but I think like I see things sometimes that just kind of like set me off a little bit.
Like what?
Like when people, do you want to get controversial?
Yeah, let's get controversial.
I think when people, when like people on Instagram give advice or make blanket statements about like what will work and what won't work generally post-surgery, it drives me kind of nuts because like I think it's very important. And I think if you have a following, not that I do, but I see these people and I'm like, I think that you have a little bit of a responsibility to like look out for your community here. And I see our community as a very vulnerable population that is looking for any sort of direction on where to go.
Absolutely.
And when you are someone who has a large following or has this shocking transformation, if you're telling people that the only right way to do something or the only that something else that someone else is doing is wrong, I think you have a responsibility to be a little bit more careful with your words. Like, this is what works for me. I think admitting that there's a slippery slope for us is way more humanizing and something that I personally connect with a lot more than acting like you kind of just have it all figured out.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. I don't think that you ever make blanket statements.
Well, no, but I like finding how to share things that was definitely something that I took into account.
Yeah. So I actually think I worry about my own account almost from the other side, because I think if you guys know, because you spend a lot of time with me, I eat pretty normally. And I would say sometimes I'm not a great bariatric patient and I eat things that other bariatric patients wouldn't eat. Like I'm pretty sure I just had 4 mini chocolate chip cookies for dinner tonight. So and I'm not proud of it.
Oh, so she definitely also ate a salad.
I did eat
chicken.
a salad with chicken. I did because it was like, oh, I should have some protein. But I know like our friend Elle, she had gastric bypass. She's very sensitive to sugar, and anytime I consume sugar around her, she's like, "Are you going to be okay?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I'm going to be fine." But I do try to post the reality of my life, but I often worry that I give people the wrong impression that everyone who has bariatric surgery will get to a point where they can too eat chocolate chip cookies and drink a Slurpee and do all those things and be fine, because they might not be able to. And like, and I don't know, I can't tell you what maintenance is going to look like for you. I can tell you what it looks like for me, but I don't know what it's going to look like. And so I think it's just as much as we don't want to say like, oh, well, I don't touch carbohydrates. I'm in maintenance and I don't touch carbs and I never will again.
Well, you should.
Like, but I also don't want to say
like, I'm so sorry.
It's a free for all and I do whatever I want and you can also do whatever you want, because that's neither one of those things is true for everybody.
Yeah.
Right. And it's a tricky thing to share your life and what you do, but also try to say like, I'm not telling you what to do.
Yeah, totally. And I think with this podcast, it's like, no, we don't want to tell anybody what to do. We're just sharing our experience and like having that sense of that community. But it's tough. Everyone has to find their own balance. What works for one person isn't going to work for another person. And there really is no one size fits all, where, you know, a lot of questions are like, when could you tolerate red meat? When could you do this? When could you do that? And it's like, we're all going to have our own answers for that. And it's comparing is just like useless.
Not helpful. Yeah. Somebody asked me recently about traveling. Like, would I be able to travel 6 weeks after or something like that? And I think about like, I would have been like, yeah, sure, dude. Because like I was completely fine. I think I traveled for work like 4 weeks after and I was fine. And I was also fine like 1 week after. Yeah. 1 day after practically. But I think about you and how much pain you were in.
I would not have.
I don't want to be the person to tell this girl she can travel after 4 weeks. Like, that's something you should ask your doctor. But
you should absolutely ask your doctor.
But if you see someone else doing it and you're like, oh, well, like, am I behind because I'm not doing it? Like, that's the kind of stuff that I think I worry, about sharing.
But I also think there's a lot of value in having this community and people who have like been through it before you.
Totally.
So you can kind of, at least for me, you know, it was such a big unknown, and being able to see people who had kind of made it to the other side and were doing well and living life. And I think that was, I wasn't a comparison. That was truly inspiration. It was like,
it was hope.
Yeah. I think that's a good word for what I was using it for. Like the comparing for me was not, because I felt like I was behind or whatever. It was literally just like, oh, this is what's maybe possible. If I don't get there, like maybe I haven't failed, but like I have never even thought about this being possible before.
Whereas I was like, if I don't get there, I have failed.
Right.
Truly, it was
So I know you've been working on this, or like you've been talking about it in therapy. Do you have any like strategies for like when you feel those types of feelings? Or like,
one thing that's really helpful for me is taking a step back and challenging the accuracy of the thought that I'm having. Like, is this thought absolutely accurate? Is it true? What facts do I have to back that up? What data do I have? And like, what would someone else say? What would I say to my niece? What would I say to my best friend?
Right.
What would one of my best friends say to me? And just like, is it true? Is the thought accurate? The other thing that I learned recently that I thought has been helpful is basically my therapist was like, the only person you should be comparing yourself to is you, is the former version of you, because again, nobody else's journey is going to be the same as yours. So you're just comparing apples and oranges. It doesn't matter if you're the same height. It doesn't matter if you had the same starting weight. All of those other factors that go into your journey, they're not accurate pieces of data for you to make any kind of comparison.
Yeah.
And that is something that's really helpful for me. If I run, like I ran recently, I did my longest run ever, and I was a little worried about the time. And so I went back to 6 months ago and looked at what my times were, and I beat them by 15 seconds, which like isn't a huge whatever, but I wasn't slower. Huge. I was faster.
Yeah.
So it's like, it's again,
your longest run ever. So you ran less before?
No. I ran 7 miles. So I took the first 5 and compared them to my 5-mile run.
Yeah, but
I did an additional 2 miles.
The way my brain works is like I can like it's just so different because I'm like, you ran 7 miles, that's the win. Who cares what time you did?
Exactly.
Like, that's fantastic.
I don't even look at my time. I'm just like, did I run?
Your brain is the goal. Yeah, that's the goal for me. I'm just not. My brain isn't. Can I say that?
I mean, mine is on other things. I get it, but I just was like,
yeah, we all have but it's really helpful when I'm like, I'll do that. I do the same thing with pictures. When I think that I'm still 250 pounds and I don't see the progress in the mirror, I make a side-by-side comparison photo. When I put on a piece of clothing and I'm like, why doesn't this fit any differently? It should fit looser now. I find a picture of the last time I wore it and I put them side by side and I see like, oh, hey, it does fit differently. But like, my brain needs to see it. My brain needs a visual. It needs proof. It needs facts. And that's what it's helpful is like, check the facts. What is true? What is accurate? And seeking that information out. And the more you do it, supposedly, the easier it gets.
Well, you told me, and it helped me a lot when I was like feeling like, oh, I see no difference. And I just feel like garbage and all of this. And remember, you were like, take a side-by-side in that exact outfit you're in, because I know you're in it. And you were in it 6 months ago, and do a comparison. And it really did make me feel a lot better.
I couldn't believe you were still wearing it. I couldn't believe it was like,
shout out Buff Bunny for making a thing I could wear at 310 pounds and also at 155 pounds.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I think the thing that I've found myself doing more recently, and this is, I think, partly because of where I am in my journey. So I'm 2.5 years out. I've been in maintenance for 1.5 years. I haven't had plastic surgery. I've like kind of just wrapped up the whole weight loss part of things. And so for me, comparison to others doesn't happen quite as much anymore, but it happens in the way that I compare where I am now to where I think I should be. So I think, oh, I should be working out at the gym more. I should be lifting heavier. I should be running more. And I'm not. I'm only walking this week because I wasn't allowed to run this week. But I think for me, kind of what you said, Lisa, is like when I get down on myself because I'm not as far along as I think I should be or I want to be, I have to stop and like take myself back to where I was, where 1.5 years ago, I couldn't even run 30 seconds without stopping. I lived 1/2 mile from the metro stop before I had my surgery, and I would drive my car to the metro stop that 1/2 mile because I couldn't walk with my heavy work bag back and forth every day. It was too much. And now I can walk. The other day I walked almost 10 miles and could have kept going. The only thing stopping me was just, time. Life. and it's easy to be like, oh, I should have been running that day instead of walking. And then I have to be like, no, that was incredible what you did. Like, you couldn't have done that 2.5 years ago.
Right. I think that mindset too, like, limits you so much, because that's what I talk about with, like, if I didn't have 45 minutes and like time to shower afterward, I was not working out because I felt like it was just like stupid, like not worth it. Yeah. And limiting that to like 20 minutes has made me like so much more consistent. And the times that I do 20 minutes are like very rare, but I can fit that in any part of my day, and it makes such a difference for me. But we're not where we were, and we're not where we're going to be, hopefully, in 6 months or a year or whatever.
Yeah. And one thing I would say, I wish I could have said this to myself back when I was looking at other people and looking at, people I thought were successful, and saying like, I hope I get there. I hope I'm on track. I hope I'm on track with what they're doing. I wish I could have said, if you never get there, would you still be happy? And the answer is yes. Like, it wouldn't have mattered if I never got to whatever end goal I thought. As long as I made progress and I was better than I started, yes, I would still be happy. And that's ultimately what matters, right? Is that like you're happy with your own improvement and changes in quality of life.
Yeah.
I've been asked that question, and my answer was very different.
You've been asked, if you never got there, would you still be happy?
In my journey, I've been asked from people like my dietitian and my whatever, when I'm worried about something, and they're like, well, so what? So what if you never do? What if that never happens? And my response is, then I will have failed.
But what about all of the things that you've already achieved? Does that not count for anything?
It totally counts. And this is not, I'm not saying this is how you should
Lisa's
think.
like, listen, I know that logically this is,
yeah.
This
Again,
feeling,
when you like hit me with the facts, like, of course it's huge. And, I beat myself up. Like you said, you couldn't run 30 seconds 2.5 years ago. Neither could I. And then I got mad that my time yesterday on my run wasn't, better. My cadence wasn't better. And I was like, wait, you literally just like ran for 30 minutes and I was barely sweating.
It's so fun. It's so nice to not just be like filthy after a workout.
I didn't shower before you guys got here after my run, just FYI.
Oh, maybe that's what we've been smelling. It wasn't the
dog.
I actually just had a revelation.
Oh.
I'm sitting here saying I don't compare very much, and maybe it was like a little moment of weakness. It was during my liquid diet.
Oh, well, you can't trust anything on that.
No. I tell people this all the time. Make your decision about having surgery or not having surgery, and then stick with it, and don't let it creep back in as a should I have it or should I not have it? Because in those few weeks beforehand, all logic is off the table. But I remember, so my family goes to Eastern Market like every weekend. It's like my happy place. We like walk or bike or whatever there, and the kids get their little pastries and we get coffee and walk around. There was a moment during one of those visits when I was on my liquid diet where I looked at all of the people around me having coffee and walking around with their family and like having their pastries and doing things like that. And I really beat myself up over the fact that I had to have surgery in order to be like them. I mean, I wanted coffee mostly. I'm about to cry, but like it really was about the coffee, I think. And also just like existentially, like, how have I gotten to this point? Like, why am I not able to like have a coffee and a pastry and like that's it, or like stop there, or like what, why am I not like them? Like, why am I not like all these normal sized people who don't have to be on a liquid diet for 5 weeks and have like massive surgery? Like, I did find myself comparing to them in an unhealthy way, I think.
What would you tell yourself now? What would you tell that Allie?
Eat something solid, probably first. Also, I think it doesn't matter. Like, it sucked, but it was a minute of my life, right? Like it's fleeting. And the why behind like, why am I not like that? Why can't I do what they're doing? It doesn't matter. I couldn't. So I could choose to wallow in that, or I could choose to do something about it, which I did. and kind of hold on to that feeling for when I'm feeling like out of control or like low or whatever. I don't want to feel that way again.
Yeah. Well, I think too, the objective fact is that you have the disease of obesity and they do not. So you can't do anything about that. You have no control over whether or not you have obesity, and it's what you choose to do with that.
Yeah. I think you said this a couple weeks ago, Lisa, like you don't have the answer. I think we were talking about how much of your obesity was like linked to genetics and environment and whatever. And you're like, I don't really have the answer to that. And actually, I don't think I need it. I don't think I need those comparisons. Like, I don't think I need to worry about like why they could and I couldn't. I just need to figure out where I am and do something about it. Yeah. You know, like, and if it bothers me that much that other people can have a coffee and a pastry, like I will get to a point where I can have coffee and a pastry and be fine. Right? Like I'll be them. There's no like great answer, I don't think, for how to deal with this. Right? Like,
yeah,
you just have to keep working at it.
And we're all human, you know what I mean? Like as humans, weight loss community or not, people are comparing themselves in careers and relationships. Like it's just something that we do. And I think being aware of it and shifting, like you said, Allie, you're just like, no, that's just not an option. That's not a thing that we're going to do.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think, knowing what works for you, being in tune with, how you're feeling. And if social media, it can be a place for you to get inspiration and find community, amazing. If it turns into a place of comparison and it starts to steal your joy, shut it off. It's not real life.
Or like retrain it. Like you can find things that do bring you joy on there and only look at those things or like block the things that don't. It'll learn.
And I think when you're on a journey like this, it truly is a journey of personal transformation. And so focusing on that transformation, that's the only comparison that matters, because that's the thing that changes your life, that affects your day-to-day life and makes things so different for you.
I think if we can leave with one thing, it's that it's okay to be struggling with it. It's okay to not be struggling with it anymore. It's okay to be like worried that other people are, whatever. That's all very normal and you're not alone.
Yeah.
Well said.
All right. Well, this was a great conversation. I feel like, as always, I gain so much, even from topics that we have already talked about with each other. I come out learning something more. So I hope you guys have also found some value in this as well. And we hope we'll see you back next week.
Thanks, guys.
Bye. Love you.